Hey guys, Peter here to do an album review. Today I'm here to tell you about the latest from Asphyx, Necroceros, out January 22nd on Century Media. This album has 10 tracks, 50 minutes in length, and this is the band's 10th full-length studio album. This death doom juggernaut from Netherlands are back with a neck-breaking record. And the first aspect of this album that I absolutely fell in love with is the structure. Now you have to divide the structure into two different elements. The first is the overall playability. This is a great record from that perspective. Very fluid, very dynamic, keeps the listener engaged, it keeps your eyes on the ball, on the road, but it gives you a little bit of a different scenery with every single song, allowing the album not to feel repetitive, to feel very fluid, like I said, very dynamic, and always pushing you forward, keeping you engaged, keeping you interested, keeping you wondering what's coming around the corner. The second element is how it feels and how it's put together in the bare bones of the structure itself. And that is an old school style approach with a side A and a side B. Side A finishes with 3 Years of Famine, a song that the moment it ends, there's a sense of finality. It's time for you to lift up that needle, flip the vinyl over, and play side B. That's exactly how it comes across. So this is an album that has an old school structure, and that matches the old school sound approach that the record has. The two go hand in hand. You really feel like you're listening to a throwback album from that perspective. So the two really blend with each other, allowing the album to become one, to become very cohesive, to become natural, almost organic as it moves along and as it gives you that old school experience at every single turn. Now, once you get into the soundscape, I love how rich, how warm, how thick it is. The volume, it is just so big and it permeates, it feels larger than life. You could feel the layers within the volume itself. And that to me is something that was very important for this record, because it allows the album to have that old school aroma to it, but still feel very modern in the way it was recorded. And it doesn't sound driven, it doesn't sound flat, it sounds full, it's filled with life, it's filled with sound, it's filled with layers. Now, some of those layers are coming out of two elements, and in my opinion, these are the two main elements that really give you this experience, and that is the drums and guitars. I absolutely love the drums on this album. You're listening to this record, and it doesn't matter what song you're on, what you want out of the drums, like you want some thickness here, I want some more power, I want them to become a little bit more subdued. Whatever it is going through your mind as you're listening to that song and as you're hoping that it's going to come around the corner, that's exactly what the drums will give you. It's almost like they're reading your mind. The drums are spot on throughout this record, giving every song exactly what the song needs, giving every song the power, the strength that the tracks need in order to keep this album alive. I love the sound of the drums, I love the power, the strength, and they really create the foundation that allows everything else to be built upon it, including the guitars. I was expecting the guitars perhaps to be a little bit more driven in their sound, considering how thick, how much volume, how much strength, how much heaviness you're getting out of the drums, but that's not the case. The guitars also have that same approach as far as their sound is concerned. So the two are kind of working in hand, if you will, working in parallel in order to create this really large sound, this really layered approach, this really thick presence that it stays true across all 10 songs. And I love the guitars because sometimes they change ever so slightly, becoming a little bit more melodic, giving you a different look, a different feel, but never losing the substance, never losing that thickness of approach on any single turn. It doesn't matter how much of an atmosphere change or how much of an approach change they take. That volume stays there regardless of what is happening, and the drums really help it. The drums really pair up with it in order to create this really important wall of thickness, of sound, of heaviness coming at you at every single turn. I love it. Now, the element that I felt that perhaps felt a little bit flat at times throughout this record is the vocals. They're very consistent. The approach that you're going to get on the first track is exactly what you're going to get all the way through to the last track on the album. Nothing really changes. There's not a lot of things to digest as far as the vocals are concerned, but the vocals feel at points a little bit flat, a little bit driven, a little bit hidden. They almost permeate throughout the record and become just a fragrance within the album. I was hoping that in some songs they had a little bit more strength, a little bit more volume, not necessarily more heaviness, but definitely a little bit more volume. Using some backing vocals perhaps would have helped in some of the chorus in order to give some presence to how the vocals coming across, because everything is so big as far as the sound is concerned that sometimes the vocals just take a back seat, and I wanted them to have more of a place at the table, and at times I didn't feel like they did that. Overall, I love this album. Even the issue with the vocals is not enough to really push this record away from me. I love how this album sounds. I love how it comes across. That structure is just magnificent. I was sold immediately on it. Having a side A and a side B, really well defined side A and side B, something that I really enjoy, and it's going to work perfectly for those that will get this album on a vinyl. So there's not enough negatives on this record to really make this album not stand out as much as it does. This is one of the great records of the month of January. I have absolutely zero doubts about that. Now, as far as songs are concerned, Molten Black Earth, favorite track on the album. I cannot get enough of this song. When I think of a death, doomy track, this is how I want that song to sound. This is how I want that song to feel. It has a little bit of melody. That melody brings a little bit of darkness. It becomes a little bit somber, but it's such a grinding song. It's heavy. It alternates tempos, slower at times, then moving a little bit faster in others. In this case, I felt that the verses were a little bit more dynamic, a little bit more fluid, and then once you get into the chorus is definitely a little bit more melodic, a little bit more somber, a little bit more darker, but it slows down ever so slightly. These changes are just enough to make the song feel very fluid, to make the song give you those ebbs and flows that you need in order to stay engaged with the track and moving it along. A song that the moment you listen to it for the first time, it becomes tattooed in your brain. Next, Mount Skull. This is a track that moves slow. It pretty much has one speed. There are some times within this track where you feel like it's moving or it's becoming something else, and it does become something else once you get into the middle point of the track. But up until that point is a track that has one speed, and it moves and it grinds you all the way there. Now, when you get to the midway point, the track changes. It completely becomes something else. It becomes more dynamic, it becomes more aggressive, it becomes more intense, it becomes heavier, it becomes almost destructive. If you start listening to this song, or if you start listening to this song in the middle, you think these are two completely separate tracks. They don't feel like they belong together. But one becomes what the other part has to offer. And then the solo that comes from it really pulls out of that intensity, really pulls out of that aggression, and it becomes the climatic moment of the song itself, because that solo elevates everything that was happening up until that point as far as the aggression and intensity is concerned, and just explodes it onto the track. It just times 10. That's the feeling that you get. Once the solo is over, the song starts to dip back again into that more subdued, slow moving process that you had at the beginning. So it's a track that goes full circle. The way it starts, it's the way it ends, but in the middle you get this burst of aggression, burst of intensity, and you get a solo that just really emphasizes that burst of power and strength. Last but not least, 3 Years of Famine, the song that ends side A. One of the most iconic songs on this album. It's the longest track on the album, but it's also one of the more dynamic, one of the more morphing tracks, one of the tracks that really allows you to see what these guys can do, how they can push a track, how they can create a song that takes you into different places and still stay connected, still stay true to its origin. I love how it sounds. It's divided into two parts. It's definitely a song that has the beginning and it has an end, and it feels like a journey, is built like a journey, and the way it ends, it has this feeling of closure, of death, of ending. That is just perfect to close off that side being, like I said, flip the vinyl over, because you're going to get more aggression, more intensity, more power in that side B. But I just love how this song is put together. It's in the right spot, it comes in at the right time, constructed in the perfect way, giving you a much different ending than what you got from the beginning, and giving you that sense of finality. Very important for an album that has this structure, that puts this song as that end cap of that side B. Love what they did with this song. This is Asphyx with Necroceros, out January 22nd on Century Media. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the singles. Use the comment section below. I'll be reading those and getting back to you. Take care, guys.